I have never had a Mother's Day that I didn't have complex and complicated thoughts. And of course, the wonderful thing about the tradition here at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Redwood City is having our youth speak on Mother's Day. Everything I say will be superfluous to having seen how they have grown into amazing young adults, still forming and formable and moving forward with their lives. Yes, every parent, every teacher, every one of us who has been observed by these youth, and believe me, they've been watching, even those of you who don't realize they have been. We are their models. And every one of us has not done everything we probably could have and should have for them, nor have we even recognized sometimes that they are parts of our lives. And we are grateful to each and every one of you youth for what you are becoming, how clearly you look at yourselves, and how well you face the world. Now, I had a mother just like you, and probably similar to some of you, my mother was a complicated person for me. She spoke well of me to others, but found every tiny flaw in my way of being that she felt needed to be corrected. You see, she expected me to be the perfect child and saw it as her job to make that happen. I never reached her goal of perfection. Example, I was 13th in my high school class, not even in the top 10. Of course, there were 8 national scholars, and I was not one of them either. But when I was about 12 years old, my mother actually started to see the impact of what she was doing with me. And unlike most other adults I have heard about when youth are 12 or 13, she apologized to me for her demands. That was somewhat confusing, but it was also something I will never forget. Now, as an adult, I realize her high expectations helped me to believe I could do more with my life than probably anybody else expected. And I did a lot of it. I'm not going into that story. What I recognize now is that perhaps the most influential thing my mother did was to live universalism. She did not just believe that all human beings had value and worth, she lived it and showed us how to live that way. She would invite anyone home. I remember that my father's father left the house when my best friend's family came to the graduation party from high school because my best friend was African American. My mother did not see that as a problem. She also raised each one of us 6 children as individuals with different approaches to each one of us. For example, she refused to drug my younger brother, Jim, with Ritalin when he was diagnosed as hyperactive. Like all the rest of us, she assessed what our particular qualities amounted to and how they challenged us. Then she made lots of useful suggestions about how to deal with our stuff. Now, I am happy to say my brother Jim has control of his temper most of the time. He also is a very, very funny man, not unlike our mother. I respect him and admire him. I don't disrespect children who have needed Ritalin, and I feel that my mother was right about Jim. She expected each of us to find ways to be of service in the world. Now, we have very different politics among us, but three of us are all anti-oppression trainers, regardless of our politics, including the one who voted for Trump. She knew that we did not have to do the same things to be useful, but we had to do something to help others. She taught us moral decision-making when we couldn't figure out how to decide whether we were going to our camping trip over the weekend or the band rehearsal we were supposed to be attending. She would have us work through the pros and cons, the consequences, how we really valued each of the activities and which was more important to us. And she gave us a chance to think it through rather than make a decision with the panic that often overwhelmed some of us in those years. As she aged, absolutely in her own way, she decided that she could call herself a sage and teach other people. It was often true. She was overly empathic and a great judge of character. When she first met my father's boss at Standard Oil, she blurted loudly and inappropriately, "That man is a snake." My father was deeply concerned that she might make him lose his job. Oddly, his boss was soon fired for inappropriate business practices. My father lasted for over 30 years. After my mother died, I came to terms with our differences through acknowledging the difficulties we shared and the values we shared. And this brings me to what my mother taught me about parents. No parent will completely be the person we think we needed, never mind who we want them to be. It made it easier to come to terms with my own failures as a mother as I worked through my criticisms of my mother. I am now deeply grateful to my mother for vowing to herself that she would not bring the physical violence she and I both experienced from her father to the rest of her children. She brought creativity, fantasy, the ability to think up stories, mystery, and most of all, wonder into our lives, despite the difficulties we had with one another. My wish and my blessing for each of you, is that you find balance in your assessment of your mothers, for some of you in your assessment of yourself as a parent, a balance, a recognition, we are who we are, we are trying to do the best we can, and we will get through life. As we come to terms with that truth, we may find our sense of self becomes more balanced. It may create a loving peace in your life as it has in mine. With respect, with responsibility, and yes, with relish for the process. My mother was really good at relish. Never could cook anything, but she was really good with relish. And so I say, and you may say with me, Amen, Amen. So be it, and blessed be.